Hi, everybody, and welcome to Lovefraud Live. So, you finally figured out what is wrong with an individual who has taken advantage of you, abused you, perhaps even assaulted you. Reading Lovefraud or watching my videos, you realize that he or she is a sociopath. You are outraged by this person's actions. You are further outraged that after the sociopath bulldozed through your life, he or she seems to be facing absolutely no consequences. The predator has simply moved on to another target, leaving you in a heap of ashes. It's mind-blowing. It's infuriating. You want this person to pay for what he or she has done to you. And if you are honest with yourself, you might have to admit that what you really want is revenge. I'm Donna Andersen, author of Lovefraud.com, and tonight I will explain how to get revenge against a sociopath. This is a live streaming show, and I'll answer your questions at the end. So please go ahead and send them as we go along. Anyway, the sociopath has left you profoundly betrayed, and now you're justifiably angry, and you're an emotional wreck. Plus, the sociopath has caused you real problems. Perhaps all your money is gone, or you're in a vicious child custody battle. You've lost your home, your savings, or your job. You suffer from anxiety, depression, or PTSD, and you feel so far down that you don't even know which direction is up. You want your life back. You want the sociopath to be held accountable for the destruction he or she has caused, and you want to make sure that he or she never does this to another human being. But the predator turns on the charm, or plays the victim, or convinces everyone that you are mentally unstable. No one seems to be able to help you. In fact, no one understands what you're talking about. So, what do? Well, perhaps you've heard the saying, living well is the best revenge. This proverb was recorded by the English poet called George Herbert in 1651. Whoever originally said it hundreds of years ago probably knew about sociopaths. But right now, with your life in tatters, you probably feel like living well is an impossible dream. But you can start working towards that goal immediately and stick it to the sociopath in the process. Remember, the sociopath's prime objective in life is power and control. If you deny the sociopath power and control over you, you take away what he or she wants the most. Power and control that the sociopath exerts is primarily over your thoughts and emotions. You can break that power and control, and it doesn't even have to cost you any money. The first step, which we talk about a lot, is no contact. If you need to know how to implement no contact, that was the topic of my video last week. And no contact is how you start your recovery. It's true that no contact is difficult in some cases, such as when you share children with a sociopath or you work together. In these situations, you need to get to emotional no contact. That means you detach emotionally. You do not allow him or her to upset you. There are caveats to this as well, because sociopaths are capable of atrocious behavior that really pushes your buttons. In these cases, you certainly deserve to be upset, just don't let the sociopath see it. Remember, they want power and control. If they see that they have triggered you, they know that they still have power and control over you. So to escape the sociopath's power and control, focus on healing yourself and improving your life. Yeah, it'll take time. It will require processing the pain, the disappointment, and the anger of the betrayal. But if you decide to recover, you can do it. Now, this does not mean that the sociopath should get away with what happened. But if you want to hold the sociopath accountable, you need to do it from a position of strength. Working on your own recovery is the best way to develop the strength. Here's an approach that may help you. Many years ago, I attended a workshop presented by a woman named Patricia Sun, and she was a pioneer in the self-awareness movement. One of the things she talked about was shifting our views about making mistakes. We tend to fear making mistakes, and when we do make mistakes, we berate ourselves. In reality, mistakes are part of life. There are no instruction manuals for most of the choices that we make. Life, therefore, is a series of decisions made mostly by trial and error. We never progress in a straight line towards our goals. We have false starts and detours. But with time and persistence, we get to where we want to go. Patricia Sun talked about viewing mistakes as opportunities to make course corrections. The energy associated with making a mistake, she said, should be that of a learning opportunity, an indication that a change is required to achieve our goals. So, what would happen if this were how we viewed the mistakes we made with sociopaths? Instead of feeling like a chump, like the biggest idiot on the planet, what if we looked at our encounters as identifying needed course corrections? Here are 10 lessons that I learned because of a sociopath. Do any of them apply to you? Lesson number 1. Wow, I sure don't want that kind of a partner. Number 2. I had no idea people like this existed. Lesson number 3. Yeah, some people can look me right in the eye and lie. Lesson number 4. I knew something was off. I have to listen to myself. Number 5. Some people are not capable of being a loving partner or parent. Number 6. I deserve better than this. Number 7. When I see this type of behavior again, I have to run and run fast. Number 8. Certain people cannot be trusted and will not change. Number 9. When I'm vulnerable, I need to protect myself. And number 10. When some people say I love you, they mean I want to use you. None of us intentionally signs up to be exploited by a sociopath. What happened was that we didn't know what sociopaths looked like, and we met someone who deceived us. If the sociopath was a romantic partner, at first he or she seemed like the person we'd been waiting for all our lives. It was only later, once we were hooked into a relationship, that the person's true character was revealed. The involvement was a mistake, but mistakes are only apparent in hindsight. I think we should cut ourselves some slack. Then we should look at the experience, figure out what we learned, and apply the lessons to the rest of our lives so that we can live well. Remember, that's where we started. Living well is the best revenge. Here's another famous saying related to this topic. Revenge is a dish best served cold. The source of that statement is also unclear. It was first translated from the French to the English in 1846, but apparently was already a proverb by then. It's not good to consciously go out and seek revenge. Here's another proverb attributed to the Chinese philosopher Confucius. before you embark on a journey of revenge, dig 2 graves. But as time goes by and you rebuild your inner strength, you may suddenly find yourself faced with an opportunity to hold the sociopath accountable. Now, the sociopath, of course, will continue a life of destruction. Eventually, he or she may target the wrong person or seriously break the law. And someone may contact you, maybe out of the blue, to find out what you know about this disordered individual. Then, in a calm and collected manner, you can describe your experience, provide evidence that proves a pattern of behavior. You can contribute to some type of justice, whether it's getting this individual prosecuted, exposed in the media, or just ruining his or her efforts with yet another potential victim. The bottom line is, revenge in the traditional sense may be possible, but probably not right away. So focus on your first priority, which is healing your own life. Then be patient. By releasing the pain and upset of the betrayal and allowing yourself to learn from your mistakes, you'll be ready for an opportunity arrives for justice. To you, justice then will be sweet revenge. Okay, so let's see what kind of questions we may have. So Pollyanna says, I had to change my number and delete social media, and she also had to learn self-love like never before. Yes, changing your phone number and deleting social media, that's a good way or good tactics to use in the no contact program. And then learning self-love, yeah, that's very important. That's what sociopaths latch onto. They latch onto our vulnerabilities. And if we have any type of vulnerability where we feel less than, or we feel like we're not deserving of love for who we are, sociopaths just latch onto that like radar. And so that's why it is very important to work on appreciating yourself, building yourself up, doing what you need to do to process out whatever negative experiences you may have had in the past, so that you can fully appreciate who you are and your own life. So those are very good steps, Pollyanna, good things to do. Okay. Okay, so how long did it take to find peace? Well, I did a program, I guess a few weeks ago, another video, you could take a look at it, about how long does it take to recover from a sociopath. And quite honestly, the answer to how long it takes is different for everybody. It depends on how long you were involved with the sociopath, what the nature of the involvement was, how wounded you are, how wounded you were before you met the sociopath. I mean, there's a lot of things that go on. The important thing is to allow yourself to process whatever pain, disappointment, grief, anger, betrayal, whatever you've experienced. And by process, what I mean is allowing yourself to feel those emotions. We're not often taught how to deal with our emotions. We're taught that, you're stiff upper lip, and if something happens, you fall off the horse, pick yourself up, brush yourself off, get back on the horse. That doesn't always serve us. There are many times in which, when we've got serious emotional wounds, they need to be dealt with. And that's how you start to recover from the sociopath, because that's what they do. First of all, the sociopaths latch on to previous wounds that we had, and secondly, they create more wounds. So we have these wounds that we need to deal with, that we need to process, that we need to allow ourselves to feel, whatever that looks like. If it makes us cry, if it makes us pound pillows, if it makes us stomp or whatever, we need to allow ourselves to experience that. And the more that we can do that, the more that we can allow ourselves to experience these feelings, the more peace we find. Because it's that tension of these emotions that are just boiling inside us that really upsets us. So it's not going to be like flipping a switch, like, you'll go through a 10-week program and at the end you'll feel fine. It's going to be more like you gradually get better as you are able to essentially release the steam, release the pressure that's inside you, release the emotional angst. And the more you allow yourself to do that, the more you will start to feel peace. And it's going to be a process, and it's going to take some time, but if you keep at it, it works. I mean, it absolutely works. I've recovered. I was married to a sociopath for like 2.5 years was the length of our relationship, and he had the opportunity to do plenty of damage in that amount of time. But I have recovered. I've happily remarried, and my husband and I have been together for almost 20 years now. So yeah, it's certainly possible to recover. Oh, and plus I got my revenge. I blew my ex out of the water. If you ever want to find out the whole story, you can see it in my book called Lovefraud. Tell the whole story. It's quite the read. Okay, so what else do we have? CC says, peace came pretty quickly when I realized that I was done protecting him. Love of self is still a work in progress. Well, yep. It doesn't really matter what order you go in. Being done protecting him, that's good. And that's also something that a lot of us do. We part of it may be self-preservation because, for a while, I know this was the case for me. For a while, I certainly didn't want to admit what my ex-husband was doing, or my husband while we were still married, what this man was doing to me as far as taking all my money, which he did, and lying to me and cheating on me. Because if I admitted what he was doing, then I would have to admit that I made a mistake, a big mistake, a massive mistake, and all those things we talked about as far as mistakes are concerned. But, once I came clean with that and left him, and, my family was supporting me and my friends were supporting me. Yeah, but sometimes you don't want to do it because then that means that you have to admit that you were wrong, which is sometimes not an easy thing to do. Okay, what else do we have? Giovanni says, I was friends with a sociopath for 3 years and didn't have a clue he was a sociopath until he started to manipulate and control me. Yeah, that's pretty common. Sociopaths can have a mask in place, and they can maintain that as long as they feel it's necessary. In romantic relationships, it's a case of, they keep that mask in place and as they're reeling you in until you sign the dotted line. But the same situation applies in other types of involvements. Sociopaths are able to maintain that charade as long as it suits their purpose. And then sometimes what happens is that for whatever reason, they decide that the charade is no longer necessary, or they're not interested in this involvement anymore, or something better has come along, and then the charade kind of stops. So that can be pretty shocking when you realize that everything you thought this person was turns out to be totally fake. Okay, Nails, I guess that's Nailsy says, can you talk about the difference between narcissists, sociopaths, and psychopaths? Are they all equally toxic and damaging? Okay. At Lovefraud, I use the term sociopath as an umbrella term for several clinical diagnoses. And the diagnoses are antisocial personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, and psychopathy. Now, sociopathy is no longer a clinical term for anything. It used to be. And the word, when it was originally coined, the meaning of it was that it described disorders in social relationships. I mean, that was the whole point of what the disorder was. And that's what all these personality disorders have in common. The people who have these disorders have problems with their social relationships, although they don't think they're having problems. The people who are on the receiving end of their behavior are the ones who see the problems, because they exploit, they manipulate, they take advantage, and this is what all those disorders have in common. Antisocial personality disorder and psychopathy are very similar, although not totally the same thing. And this all goes back to practically a political dispute among the mental health professionals. You have the research scientists on one side who use the term psychopathy and do all their studies with that definition, and then you have the clinicians on the other side who use antisocial personality disorder and do their diagnoses based on that disorder. They're very similar, but not totally the same. Narcissism is a separate personality disorder, and they all have their criteria. You could go to lovefraud.com, and we have a page describing the criteria for all these disorders. I think it's fair to say that psychopathy is the worst. They're the ones who essentially have the grandiose sense of self. They're highly confident. They have no empathy. They're very cold. They're capable of, hurting somebody with the same amount of distress that one of us may have with, carving a turkey or something like that. However, violence is not necessarily a criterion for any of these disorders. But when violence does happen, with psychopaths, it tends to be what they call instrumental, and what that means is that it's cold and calculating, whereas with many people who have antisocial personality disorder, with them it tends to be more impulsive. And this is the key difference between psychopathy and antisocial personality disorder, is that the psychopaths can often have a lot more control over their impulses than people with antisocial. But anyway, for most of us, the distinction really doesn't matter. All we really need to know is that this person is toxic, is bad for us. They have a medical condition that is not going to improve. There is no therapy. There is no rehabilitation once someone with these disorders is an adult. So essentially what you want to do is get the person out of your life, regardless of what the terminology, regardless of the diagnosis, get the person out of your life. Okay. How do you get your friend to believe that they are friends with a psychopath? Yeah, that can be really difficult and sometimes a losing battle. You can educate yourself about what a psychopath is. You can recognize what this person has done to you, and then probably the best thing to do is wait for an opportunity. If the psychopath has treated you poorly, sooner or later he's going to treat other people poorly. And if you have an opportunity to talk to someone and they say, whoa, he did this, he lied about this, he's always telling a story, then you can kind of, weed in that, I think this guy might have a personality disorder. But the key is to educate yourself. I mean, the more knowledge that you have so that you can talk in a calm and controlled manner about the disorder, the more you'll be able to be believed. And also keep in mind one thing is that most people associate a psychopath with a serial killer. And if your friend hasn't killed anybody and you say he's a psychopath, they're going to think you're exaggerating, or you just are talking stuff that doesn't make any sense. So it's important to understand that, not only do you have to know what a psychopath is, but you have to know what it isn't. And it isn't necessarily a serial killer. Your friends may have that idea that this is what a psychopath is, so because of that, they're not going to be able to comprehend what you're talking about. So the best thing to do, as I said, is to educate yourself, and then when you have an opportunity, say a few things. Okay. Oh my. So Nicole says, will you please explain why my mother could justify sleeping with my husband? Well, I'm sorry that happened to you, but that is classic sociopath or psychopath. Essentially, a psychopath feels totally entitled to whatever it is that they want. They have no morals, they have no conscience, they have no heart, and they want what they want, when they want it, and how they want it. So that's why she can justify it, is because, that's one of the cores of this disorder, is that a psychopath or an antisocial and a narcissist, not so much the other ones, but for those three, they just totally believe that they are entitled to whatever they want. Now, of course, this is never going to make sense to you, and all you can do really is two things. You can get over the hurt, which is going to be hard, and you can just come to understand that these people are disordered. They just simply are not like the rest of us. In fact, I have another video that you might want to look for. It's called, Think About Psychopaths as an Alien, because they are. They are so totally different. Their motivations are different. Their objectives are different. So that, you really need to let it sink in as how abnormal and how different they are. Because no, that's never going to make sense to you. But that's what they are. And that's the only answer, is that this is what they are. Okay. Nicole says, and then blaming you when she was exposed. Yep, that's just typical psychopathic behavior. All right, so Tamara Brown says, how is a relationship with two narcissistic? I am divorced from a covert, and now he is married to an overt narcissistic. I'm not quite getting your question there, so maybe if you're still here, you could clarify a little bit. All right. Should you warn the sociopath's targets about them? That's from SC. That's another topic that we've debated on Lovefraud quite a bit. There are pros and cons. The key is, can you warn the person safely? Now, personally, I think that you should at least try if you can do it safely. And by safely, what I mean is that you don't jeopardize your physical safety, your finances, your job, your home, anything like that. If you can do it essentially with impunity, then I would consider it. However, if you want to warn someone, one of three things are going to happen. Either the person is going to believe you and perhaps leave the relationship, or the person is not going to believe you because, of course, your ex has already, trashed you and said that, you're psychotic and mentally unbalanced and racked by rage and jealousy. Or the third option is that the person might not believe you right away, but once they start seeing bad behavior, they may remember what you said, and then it'll start to sink in. And you have to be comfortable with whatever happens, and you may never know whatever happens. A lot of people say not to warn, but I think it's a good idea. I have heard of plenty of people who wished they had been told by somebody what was going on, and they were angry that, people who knew what the person was all about never said anything. Plus, if we don't say anything, these people continue to get away with it. And this is not good. This is why they continue to swindle and break hearts and everything that they do, is because nobody's talking about it. So it could be a little scary, but if you can do it safely and be comfortable with whatever the outcome is, I suggest you at least try. Okay. Oh, so Tamara says, how is a marriage with a covert and overt narcissist? Well, it's someplace I certainly wouldn't want to be. Sometimes it's like throwing gasoline on a fire and it just gets really explosive. Other times they like tag team and, gang up on other people. I would say steer clear. I mean, the best thing you can do is steer clear from a situation like that. Oh, so IW says, how to get the judge to order him to stop stealing from the 401k before the end of the divorce. You need a good attorney. And if your attorney hasn't locked down the 401k, that's a problem. I mean, that's a pretty basic step, that the accounts should be locked. So I would definitely bring that up with the attorney, because no, he should not be doing that. All right. So SC says, can you warn the new targets anonymously? Yeah, if you think that'll work, you could certainly try that. The person maybe will believe it, maybe not. I mean, you could try whatever you're comfortable with. I mean, if you're willing to at least give it a shot, then whatever works. Okay, well, that's it for our program this evening. I thank you all, and we'll be back next Tuesday and for another episode of Lovefraud Live. Thanks a lot.